today is author Ryan Steck. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Man, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I was just commenting on your setup.
Yeah.
So you're doing a lot of stuff over on Twitch, huh?
Yeah, I have been, I think, for 3 years now, two, three
Yeah,
years. So it started with I'm a gamer.
yeah.
Started with a love of gaming during COVID.
Hmm.
Everything was locked down. So I feel like it was the first time since like high school, college age, like all my buddies were on. We were playing like Call of Duty Warzone and having fun. And so I found out that there was people that just like got on camera and played video games. And it just so happened to be right at the time where I was looking to step out of the shadow as the real book spy and sort of establish my own not really brand but relationship with readers and people as Ryan, not the book spy. So I started playing Call of Duty Warzone on Twitch with my friends, and just sort of got to know people that way directly with me. And then that, of course, led to like, well, this is an extension of everything I do on the Real Book Spy. So we started bringing on guests and interviewing people, and it just became, like a really fun sort of like, let's all hang out together and bring guests on, and it's been a lot of fun.
Are you playing anything besides Call of Duty?
No, because I have like no time to.
Yeah.
So with all the different, like I have 3 books out this year. I have 6 kids. I'm still running the books by. Like I have no time for anything. I like don't even have time to play Call of Duty Warzone. I just make it. And my excuse with my wife is like, I don't do anything else competitive. I don't really have hobbies like a lot of husbands. So she shoos me back up to my office, and I hop on with my buddies a few times a week, and I literally play with my best friend. So that's it.
Dude, that's cool, man. 3 books and 6 kids. What is the age range of your kids?
Adult, right on down to 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, congratulations on three
Man,
books and 6 kids. I mean, that's both quite big accomplishments. I'm very happy for you.
only 5 still live at home. My adult son is moved out, but 5 still live at home, and it's a lot. There's always something going on.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And 3 books. So what 3 books do you got out?
So Ted Bell's Monarch. This just came out. It's the first, my first Alex Hawke novel in the late Ted Bell, his in the late Ted Bell's New York Times bestselling series. Ted was a really good friend and a mentor to me. I worked with him as an editor and other things just behind the scenes for like a decade, and he passed away 2 years ago in January. Man, it's one of the hardest loss I've ever dealt with in my
Wow.
life. I sat right here the night that I got the call that he passed, and I just sobbed like so hard I had to lock my door. My wife was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm really not. We lost Ted, and it was a big loss." So when they came to me a few months later, and my agent called and said, "Ryan, do you want to write Alex Hawke novels?" I was like blown away, and I said, "Yeah, for sure." And so Ted Bell's Monarch is out now. This book is all about King Charles has gone missing, and Alex Hawke, who's like James Bond on steroids. He's former MI6, the sixth richest dude in England. Super handsome. Like he's got it all, man. It's like the life that we want. He's got 72 hours to find the king before a controversial vote that threatens to pull the whole UK apart at the seams. So it's my first Alex Hawke novel that's out now. And then you can see behind me, I have my own series, my Matthew Red series. This is a little bit shiny because it's just like an advanced copy, but gone dark. My next Matthew Red book comes out June 17th. And then I actually have another book with a buddy of mine named Simon Gervais called The Second Son. It's the first book in a new series that we're doing together, and that's out in September. No, wait, November. I think it's like November 11th or something.
Very cool. How many Matthew Red books have you done?
So Gone Dark is number 4, and I'm writing the 5th one right now.
Amazing. When did the first one come out?
I think it was September of 22.
Okay, okay. And now Matthew Red, if my research serves me correctly, this is a character that you've been working on or came up with a long time ago. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, it is, man. It's so wild because I created them in high school. So I was like the troublemaker in school. I never paid attention. I was the class clown and always talking, always in the principal's office, always in trouble for something. And I can honestly say it was the first time I took an assignment really seriously. So we had an intern for our English class, 10th grade. and she came in and no one's listening. And she's like, all right, guys, you can write anything you want. You have to do this creative writing assignment this weekend. I don't care if you swear. I don't care if there's violence. I don't care that. So, like, I'm 15 years old, you know, and I'm like, we can swear and violence. Like, I'm so in. So I went home and I took it very seriously. I didn't know I was, but a lot of the same things that I think of now as an author, character development, setting a scene, being visual. So I wrote about this kid I just created named Matthew Red and made him like a teenage vigilante, and he has to protect his school from an attack. So I did not know it was a peer-to-peer assignment. So the next day, I can still remember the kid. His name was Trenton, and he had to read my paper out loud, and he just kept stopping. Like, should I keep going? Like,
Can
no
I
one,
say can
no,
I say this?
no one knew what to do, dude. Like the teacher was like, I guess just keep reading it. Like, no one knew what to do. So the next day I get called down to the principal's office. That was not a new thing for me. But what was new is I saw my mom, my dad, the superintendent, the vice principal, and the principal. And I was like, I don't even know what I did, but it's definitely not good. And so I had those parents that were like, get in trouble at school, you're in trouble at home.
Yeah.
I was always in trouble at school and at home. It sucked. And this is the one time I go in and they had my paper out and they're like holding it up and they're like, he went way overboard. And my mom, who's the sweetest Christian lady you'll ever meet in your life, always was like the first one to be hard on me. And I love her for that because she's always honest, always wants me to be the best version of myself. And she stopped and said, well, hold on, wait a minute. He did the assignment. And they were like, he went way overboard. And she said, well, yeah, but why aren't we holding the teachers, the interns accountable? Why are we just putting it on the 15-year-old kid? So they were like, we hear you. It's a good argument. He's suspended for a week. So it was the one time where I got suspended at school and I was not in trouble at home. So
Amazing.
I was at home playing video games, playing Madden. The whole week off, I just did whatever I wanted. My parents were pretty cool about it. Flash forward all these years later, as an adult, I started to wonder, what would that kid that I created, what would Red be up to as an adult? So armed with perspective of life as an adult, a father, a husband, I was just wondering. And that led to Fields of Fire. Here's my favorite part of this story. My two oldest that graduated, and their principal was my old principal.
Wow.
Who now reads my book. Shout out to Don Eastman.
All right.
He's a great man. So my favorite moment in my career being an author, he came up to me and, said, I've read your books and all that. I can't believe this is from middle school. And we kind of talked in high school and I said, hey, joke's on you, bud, because I got a week off school and a book deal out of this. So it all worked out.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's such a great story, man. I love that. What, just out of curiosity, what part of the country was your high school in?
Michigan, Southwest Michigan.
Okay, okay. I'm just trying to visualize the scene here. Like, is it a very like small town, like religious
No, it
town?
was no. We were a big school, and don't let the Yankees cap throw you. I'm a Jeter fan. I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Jeter, Kalamazoo kid.
Okay,
So the captain with the Yankees. I was always a Yankees fan. But born raised in Michigan. Still live here. My
cool.
wife and I live Southwest Michigan. Still to this day. Different school district. I went to school in a district that was kind of more run down, bigger,
Yeah.
and my kids are in a much nicer district. So my principal really moved on up. Swap
Okay.
districts, got to the nicer school. Super good guy, and it just is one of those things where I don't think you could tell that story if it wasn't true.
Yeah, that's such a good story. And did you end up going to college? Did you study writing or creative writing, or what's the kind of journey? What's the path to from that story to where you are now?
It's a good question. I started college for marketing. I
Mhm.
had no idea what to do. Started marketing, absolutely hated it. I found out that we're all just tricked. It was like 3 days in, and we're learning about branding and how they brand things, and it's like the same product, just rebranded. I was like, this is so stupid, and we all fall for it. Um, I'm the type that, like, if I'm not challenged, then I don't do well.
Mm.
I just get like really, I'm super ADHD. So if I am not being challenged and pulled into something, I can't focus on it. And so I like to stay busy. So I started for marketing and was like, man, this is so not for me. I'm out. and ended up going into sports journalism and really believed that was going to be my career.
Yeah.
So I started young. I actually didn't finish college and started with an internship to do sports journalism. Had my dream job, or what I thought was. So I was covering the Detroit Lions, like a beat reporter for a whole year. And I really struggled to like read and write at times. And it wasn't until I was an adult, already a father, married, and I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And
Uh-huh.
it all made sense. Like I was like, okay, so I took time off um, to sort of retrain my brain. And my doctor said, just go read, just read a lot. So I Googled dyslexic authors because I figured like someone out there's been dyslexic, beat it, and is writing for a living.
Yeah.
I have no idea why I did dyslexic authors and not dyslexic journalists, but I did dyslexic authors. And my all-time now, I didn't even know who he was at the time. Vince Flynn popped up, creator of Mitch Rapp. So I didn't immediately buy the books, but the craziest thing happened. It was like a short while later, I turned on the news and it was breaking news that Minnesota New York Times bestselling author Vince Flynn passed away of cancer. And I was like, man, I just read about this guy. So I bought my first Vince Flynn book that night called American Assassin. And I was in love. I was hooked. And I went through the entire series in like a couple of weeks. I just like
Wow.
flew through 12, 13 books. And so I decided like, man, I really love thrillers. And I got into thrillers and mysteries. And then decided rather than like sports writing, maybe I'll try covering books. So I was writing for other outlets and writing reviews for other media outlets, and that really sucked. Again, I'm the type that like I need to be challenged or engaged, and I didn't love being told how to cover books and what to do. And I thought, I know how to cover the NFL, like a sports team. What if I just start my own website and I cover it like that? So I think of the genre as like the NFL and
Mhm.
each author as like a team, or their series as that team and they're the player. So I launched the realbooksby.com and we do book announcements and book deal announcements and cover reviews and book reviews and author interviews, and that took off quick. I mean, it just like I think year 2, the goal was to get a million hits, and we went to 2 million like on year 2,
Nice.
and it just soared from there. And before that, honestly, I'd got into some editing, like working with some authors and sort of cut my teeth coming up. And Ted Bell, Teddy was a guy that I worked with behind the scenes for a decade, and so I was editing and I was running the Book Spy. And it's no, I didn't really study creative writing or anything, but what I found is that most authors never did.
Yeah, yeah. And is it mostly like just reading, like reading stuff that you like and then kind of taking it from there?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in this. Like you could go to school for creative writing if you want to be an author, go for it. But I don't think they can teach you how to be a storyteller.
Yeah.
People have it or you don't, man. Like we've all sat around a campfire with someone, they start telling a story and you're just like hanging on their every word.
Yeah.
They might not be the best writer, but you can teach that. A good editor can help clean that up. Like you can tell a story or you can't. And then you understand characters or you don't. I'm not saying you can't be taught some of those things and get better, but I do think some of it is just sort of like it's in you or it's not.
Yeah, yeah. Was there ever a point so you become basically an editor and a book reviewer, and was there ever a point like what's the turning point where you're like I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to write some pages.
And I always wanted to like tell stories. And my parents would tell you that growing up, I told way too many stories and was always in trouble for lying and making stuff up. And that's why I tell them to this day, I write fiction. But I just, I got to a point where like you cover stuff. And when you're working on things as an editor, you can give feedback to an author and say, I think you should do this. And they don't always listen. And it's their book, it's their story, it's their characters. They don't have to. But there was something in me that was like, man, I really wish I had like full control to do what I wanted with this. And that was when I started wondering, I wonder what that kid I created in high school would be up to, what he would look like today. And it just sort of evolved from there.
Yeah. I'm curious about your process. Do you like people always, I always hear people say you have to make an outline, or do you just start like free writing, like hammering out pages, or what is your process like when you're going to write a book? Do you have an idea already, or is it complete free flow, or is it outline, or can you tell us a little bit about like
Yeah,
what's your
for
process?
sure. It's a great question. So Ted Bell was a good example of an author who's sort of a pantser. That's what we call it. He could just sit and write.
What do you
No,
call him, a pantser?
a pantser. Yep. Yeah, he could just sit and write by the seat of his pants. Just create. And 6 months later, he'd have a book that would make sense. Dude, I cannot do that. Now, I don't do like a chapter by chapter outline. And I basically just need to know where I start and where I end.
Yeah.
And once I have that, I can sort of figure out the middle. Now, I will tell you, there was a funny moment. My first book deal, Fields of Fire, was done. That's my first book. So Tyndale bought that, and they bought a second book from me. And we had our first meeting about the book that would become Lethal Range. You can see behind me. And like, my agent's on this Zoom call, bunch of people. And I just remember being like, they were talking about the outline. And I said, well, I'm not really going to outline. I don't think I outline, I'll probably take some notes, this or that. It was just like a lot of faces that I couldn't figure out, why was this such an issue? And they were like, well, okay. And as soon as the call ended, my phone rang and it was my agent. So I knew I did something wrong. Like, I was like, what did I do? So I pick up the phone and he's like, that was bold. So you don't outline. And I was like, what can I say? Like, I don't really want to outline, and I've given all these excuses, and he listens and he goes, uh-huh. Hey, Ryan, you have like a pretty big payment tied to turning in that outline. And I was like,
Oh.
I'll outline right now. I love outlining. Like,
Uh,
yeah, I was kidding. I outline all the time. Let me work on my outline. And
Right.
so,
That's a step that you get paid for with your deal.
yeah, it is. I didn't know that at the
Yeah.
time. I
Yeah.
really didn't. And every deal is a little different. So yeah, so with my own series, I do an outline, but it's not very thorough. It's like 6 to 9 pages. That sounds like a lot. But when you're talking 120,000 words for a book, a novel, like, no, 6 to 9 pages is not a ton. Um, and then I write the last chapter first.
Smart.
That's my thing. So if I know where the story ends and I write that, and then I go back to the beginning and I tell it, I know when I'm done because I reached that point. And then I feel like I'm never rushing the ending. There's this tendency that writers have, and it's not on purpose. It's not that anyone's lazy, but you have a deadline. Those are tough. So you're staring at a deadline, like, I have to have this book done and turned in by this date. And you're looking at your word count. So you're writing. You're like, oh, I'm at 90,000 words. Let me wrap this thing up. And that's why a lot of books, the ending can feel rushed. A writer's on a deadline. They've hit their word count. Time to get this thing turned in. But as a reader, I hate that. I hate
Yeah.
that feeling of, man, I'm so invested. I've given 8 hours of my life and I feel cheated at the end. So I swore I would never do that, man. This economy's rough. People are spending 25, $30 of their hard-earned money to go pick up a hardcover. Like, I want you to get your money's worth.
Yeah.
So I write the ending first, and then I know where the story's supposed to stop, and I just write at a natural pace until I get there.
That's pretty cool, man. It's funny that you said about being able to tell that like someone got to their end of their word count and they're like, let's wrap this up. It reminds me when I was in college, I wrote a screenplay for a class in college, and literally the teacher was like, you see what happened here on this page in your script? And it was like close to the end. It was like, maybe 30
Yeah,
pages left. He's like, on this page right here, I see Jeff pulled the ejection seat. Jeff saw he only had 30 more pages to go and just like wrapped this thing up. So like I totally relate to what you're saying
it's
about
true
that,
though,
you know?
and again, I don't ever want to like put a writer down, but deadlines, you're staring at a deadline, and when you're writing, you know, if you work out every day, you could wake up tomorrow and go, man, I just do not feel like hitting the gym, and you can force yourself through that, right? You can make yourself go do it. And with most jobs, that's true. But when your job is to create and it requires creativity, there are days I just don't have it. I don't have it. You know, I didn't sleep well, or I haven't figured out how to get myself out of a jam. You know, we would do calls um, with for my Matthew Red books, and there was a wonderful lady. She was like my work mom. Her name is Jan Staub. She's retired from Tyndale. Huge influential presence in my early career. And she would say, she'd, you know, read some pages as I was writing, and she'd say, Ryan, this is so good. I can't wait to see how you get read out of this. And I would think, me too. Me too. I hope I can. And so there's certain days like you don't quite have it. And you
Yeah.
could put words down and know that I can come back tomorrow, next week, fix these and make it better. But sometimes you really just don't have the answers to the questions that you're posing in your own stuff, and you're trying to find it. So there's just days where I think you're very naturally not as productive, and that's
Yeah.
hard. You know, it's really hard. So yeah, when you're looking at a deadline and you're up against, you know, that time crunch, and the creative process is not where you need it to be, you know, it happens. You look at your word count and you think, gosh, I'm almost there, let me just wrap this book up. But you know, my goal was to never do that.
I really like the thing you said about like writing the ending first. And I'm curious, like when you write an ending or when you write a book, and specifically the ending, are you like what do you have in mind? Are you trying to like send a message to the world, like like kind of like a myth, like a fable would kind of
Yeah.
share a message, or are you just trying to make the most entertaining thing you can write, or the most like unique thing you can write, or the most something that's the most cinematic? Like, what do you have a thing that you're going for? Is it about the
Yeah,
message or the entertainment or the
definitely.
like both, all
Every
of the above?
every book's a little different, you
Yeah,
know. So I kind of know where I'm leaning with each ending. I put a lot of thought into that. I hope that like people who read Ted Bell's Monarch, I've never put more into an ending. Paralleling one of Ted's books, just the depth of like the character development, and I knew exactly what note I wanted to end on, like
that's cool.
exactly. I'd been going through the books, preparing to write Monarch, and in 12 books, Ted Bell wrote in every one of them. Alex Hawke says, when I was a child, I used to love storms, and I used to always pray that they would never stop. And so one day I was talking to Bertie Bell, who's my boss. She's Ted's daughter. She now runs the estate, and she's become a really wonderful friend of mine and a dear friend, and really helped. You know, I think together we healed a lot in this process. You know, she lost a dad, I lost a mentor, and we have each other now. We're like, she's like family to me, and I think we healed together in this process. But I said to her one day, you know, every book talks about Hawk loves storms, and she said, well, my dad did. And I was like, there it is. So I know exactly how I'm going to end this book. So that was a deeper thing, and I wanted to set up the next one. That's normally my style. I do an epilogue. So a lot of books, you get a final chapter, right? And it's like you tie up everything in that book. Well, I always do that, and then I sort of like that extra credit mid credit scene, right? That's sort of what my epilogues are. I like to just show you what's happening after all of, you know, everything's been tied up into a bow, and this story's out of the way. Now what's happening? And that's usually where I'll show recap or have a reveal or set up the next book.
Very cool. Is the wanting storms to never end, is there some kind of metaphor in there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't want to say too
You have to
much.
read it. Yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's not. I promise that's not even a sales pitch. It's a pretty good one, but it's not. It would be a spoiler, but definitely I tied that in, and I really tie it to a metaphor and a revelation for the character himself.
Yeah, and would you say that you are also trying to give some sort of message to the audience, like some sort of kind of make them think kind of thing?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always want those to be two-sided. Okay, you want casual readers that maybe this is their first Hawk book. You don't want it to be so heavy-handed that they're like, wow, what was that deep metaphor I didn't get? Do I need to go read all 12 other books to understand it? So
Yeah.
to me, these are layered. Right off the cuff, you could read it and have no understanding at all.
Yeah.
You could know that you might not know Hawks ever said that in the other books, but it would make sense in the context of this story. But then if you've read the others and you're familiar, I would hope that there's a much deeper sort of takeaway there.
Yeah. Would you say you're layering it in as well so that if someone wants to, they can just read it for pure entertainment and just have a
Oh,
good time?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is number 13 in the series, but you do not need to read the other 12. You can pick this one up and jump right on in.
Yeah, yeah. You ever try screenwriting, or you sticking to the books?
You know, you sound like my agents at WME. It's yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. So I've been close twice in Hollywood with my own series, and both times it kind of
Is that for Matthew Red?
yeah, for the Red series, we've been close twice on getting a sale. I'm the guy, it always falls apart right at the end. Something happens. There was a writer's strike that killed it the first time, and then there was the wildfires in California and LA that just everything stopped. Um, and so I don't know. I've had time to think about it, and I still don't know. I suppose if someone optioned my books to make into, film or TV, and they wanted me to be involved, I for sure would be willing to try it. But I don't really feel like a calling to go into screenwriting. I really respect people who can do it. But my stance has always sort of been, if my books are ever made into movies, that is so awesome. But I'm willing to give creative control away and let someone else put their own interpretation on that. And then if someone wants my take on it, read the books.
Very cool. Yeah, I like that. Do you can you envision any actors playing Matthew Red?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I know they hate when I say this, but it is true. I wrote the part with Jason Momoa in mind,
Oh, cool.
and like we got to Jason Momoa, and then the writer strikes happened a couple years ago, and everything stalled.
And shut it down.
It just did. Yeah, killed it.
Yeah. So you wrote the Ted Bell book and he was your mentor prior.
Yeah,
How close did you stick to like his voice and writing style versus putting your own twist on there?
it's a great question. This is the hardest thing I've ever done, and I've done several interviews, and people go, "You mean in your writing career?" And I say, "No, in my life. This is the hardest thing I've ever done."
Wow.
Ted was a world class wordsmith. Hawk is British. Um, he has a very distinct word choice pattern, this cadence that he speaks with. He's very
Yeah.
proper, but he's whimsical, he's sarcastic at times. There's certain words he doesn't use. um, I decided I was going to write this book like Ted. I mean, I very early in the process, I realized, why would anybody want my take on Alex Hawk? I don't even want my take on Alex Hawk, you know? And so I thought, okay, I worked with Ted. It's like learning a new language.
Yeah.
I took 6 months. Ted has a brilliant narrator who's back for Monarch. John Shea did the audiobook. And I listened to all the previous audiobooks on a loop for 6 months, drove my kids and my wife nuts. I literally fell asleep listening to them. It was on in my office, when I was driving, when I'm going to Starbucks. Anything I did, I had the audiobooks on so I could be hearing the delivery of Hawk's voice.
Yeah. Smart.
And I knew if I could get that down, the rest would come. And I told Birdie Bell again, and I have so much love and respect for her and what she's doing to continue her father's legacy. And I felt the weight of being the writer, in that chair. And the first time I typed a quotation mark and Hawk is about to speak, I realized no one but Ted has ever given this character a voice. And I sat here and just wept right at my keyboard. Like, it was very heavy.
Wow.
So it was very much like learning another language. And this is the example I give. My character is simple. So he might say something like, should I shine a light on that? Whereas Hawk might say, allow me to, or shall I endeavor to illuminate? See, it's very different. It's the same
Yeah.
but different. It's a whole different word choice and selection. And it's just a massive undertaking. So you got to learn to speak a different language in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
once I did that and I got comfortable, it really started to just pour out of me. And I had so much fun at that point because these are fun characters. These books are like James Bond on steroids, like big over the top action, fun. And so once I got over like the pressure, the anxiety, and the stress of I need to make sure I can find this character's voice, then it was fun. And I've already written the second one and turned it in. It's
Cool.
called Warmonger, and I can tell you that one was so much easier to write because I already been through it. Like I now knew the language. I could do it.
The character is super loaded, right?
Yes.
So are there any specific things that are like his thing, like a type of car, a type of suit, a type of watch, a type of gun?
Yeah, oh yeah, oh for sure, dude. He's a Rolex guy. He used to smoke Marlboros in the early books, and then he's got a special brand that's made specifically just for him. Hawk's got a lot of quirks. I added some, but for me, the culture shock between characters. I was finishing Gondart, and towards the end of, and let's see, I have it here. Towards the end of this book, man, there's my hero is a former Marine Raider turned cattle rancher in Montana. He has a family, wife, kids. He just wants to live a quiet life. That's all he wants. Now, I can't let that happen to him, right? But that's what he wants. Hawk, on the other hand, is a billionaire who craves the adrenaline. He craves the adventure. So like they already couldn't be more different. My guy is like broke, and I want to give him a gun, but I'm like, man, he could never afford, you know, like a $12,000 gun. Like I don't know how he could ever do this. So I had to literally get creative in finding a way for my character to have this firearm. Chapter 4 of Monarch, Hawk has a new private jet. Like that's the different worlds that I'm in, going between writing my series and Ted's.
Wow, what fun. You mentioned there are some words that Hawk does not use. Do you feel comfortable sharing any of those?
Well, the F word is a big one. He never says it.
He doesn't say fuck.
He will not.
Does he say the C word, which I understand is quite a bit more acceptable in London
Hawk,
than it is over here?
it is way more acceptable there than here. That's true. No, Hawk does not. Yeah, I actually have sort of like a little list of things that I know he doesn't say. And
Is he just too classy to curse like that?
I think so. I think he's just too proper.
Nice.
He came up really proper. Um, and now listen, I don't want to. If for people that are like have never heard of Hawk or aren't reading the books yet, first of all, go pick up Monarch. But this dude is ice cold. I
Yeah.
mean, he will be the coldest killer in the room when he needs to save lives.
Yeah.
But the way he talks is more elegant.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Which,
Um,
by the way, I just want to say makes some of like the one-liners in the middle of a battle scene really fun to write.
I bet. I bet. How important would you say in your line of work or in any work, creative work specifically, would you say is it important to have a mentor? Like you mentioned, Ted was a huge mentor of yours, and can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about like how that came about and how that helped you?
Well, Ted, I mean, look, Ted, I get emotional talking about Ted. He changed my whole life.
Wow.
I went from like sports writing. A lot of I've said this before, but I don't know how people know it. Um, there'd be no real book spy without Ted Bell. So I had the idea, and he was like, "Buddy, if you build a website for thrillers, we'll all come support you." And he was the first author to endorse what I was doing as a real book spy. And yeah, like it's being a critic, but that's such a small part of what I do there. It's really more of there's an author named Ben Coes, and he once said the real book spy is the Adam Schefter of the thriller world. It's more like being an insider and breaking news.
Yeah.
So to have the respect of different authors from day one because of Ted, I mean, it changed everything for me. If you're starting a website today and you want to emulate what I did, you wouldn't be able to because you wouldn't have the backing of a guy like Ted Bell, instant credibility and respect. So Ted did that for me. There you go through, everybody goes through self-doubts when you're writing a book. I've written a bunch of them already now in my career, and I always feel like I hope I can do this again. So the pressure you feel writing your first one and the doubt that you go through, everyone in my life said to me, hey, if you ever write a book. But when Ted talked to me, Ted would say, when you write a book,
Cool.
when your book comes out, when you're an author. And it was just like he so believed it. And so to have someone that in their heyday was selling like Clive Cussler, I mean, he was just a really big presence in the thriller genre at his peak. To have a guy like that believe in me early in my career, yeah, that was a real game changer for sure.
Did he find you because you started the website, or was it the other way? Did he find you before that?
Yeah, well, so I reached out to him early, before the Real Books By even started. Uh, he was my dad's favorite author, which all of this made it very cool, right? It'd be like, um, if your dad's favorite team was the Yankees and you got to go pitch for them, you know. When I
Yeah.
got this gig, I think my dad was more excited about me doing Alex Hawk than me doing Matthew Red Books, you know. Um, no, I honestly don't even know how it all came to be. It was just meant to be. Like, I mean, we connected. We knew a lot of mutual people. We had a lot of mutual friends, and then we hit it off immediately. The first time we talked, we completely hit it off, and we were just like instantly close and stayed that way. Until he passed away.
Wow, it's beautiful. If you could go back and share one piece of advice with your younger self, like right at the beginning of your writing journey, what would that be?
Well, look, man, if I would have known for 10 years working with Ted that I'd be taking over Hawk, I would have told myself, ask more questions and write stuff down.
Yeah.
Um, for sure. And that's kind of a joke answer, but I really do mean it. You know how many times I've thought it's crossed my mind, like as I'm writing these books, like, oh, why didn't I ask Ted this? Why didn't I ask him that? But I mean, I never dreamed I would be writing Alex Hawk novels. As a novelist in general, yeah, I think I would go back and tell myself, don't listen to how anybody else does it. So if you're a writer watching this podcast right now, and you hear that I write the ending first, doesn't mean you need to. You hear that my outlines are 6 to 9 pages, doesn't mean yours need to be. You hear that I don't do chapter outlines, doesn't mean you can't, right? Like, I think people get caught up in like, how do you do it? How do you do it? And you're trying to emulate, and really you just need the freedom to create.
I love that. I love that. So it's like do what works for you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you said this. I think you said it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
Okay.
I like the idea of rather than write what you know, write what you want to read.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I believe that. I think I'm probably not the originator of the quote, but I do say that all the time because I believe it. If you could only write what you know, my books would all be about, a middle-aged guy with 6 kids and a family, right? Like it would bore everyone to tears.
Yeah.
I did another interview this week and they asked about research and how can you write about this if you've never been there? And I said, well, hold on. We write fiction. This is going to shock you. I've also not been in gunfights. I've also never been a billionaire or British, so it's fiction. Like, give yourself room to create what you like. Ted Bell lived by that. He lived by write what you want to read. He
Yeah.
had so much fun reading his own books. My best memories with Ted, he would call me sometimes and go, "Hey, buddy." And I'd say, "Teddy, what's up?" And he'd say, "Hey, I'm writing this new book and I'm kind of stuck." And I'd go, "Well, tell me where you're at." And he'd spend 30, 45 minutes, an hour reading me chapters. And I got to hear Ted Bell voice his characters, and he would really do it. He'd do the accents and play these characters, man. And I got to hear all that. I'd be so lost in it that I'm just like riveted. And then he'd stop, and I'd go, "Well, what happens next?" And he'd go, "I have no idea. That's why I'm calling you." And I would just like be laughing, like, "Oh man, we got to figure it out because I'm dying to know." So I think you got to live by that. Everyone says write what you know, but I think people struggle with that. As an editor, I've worked with police officers, man, and like they're writing like, we need a stakeout scene. And I'm making suggestions, and they're like, "Dude, you can't write a stakeout scene. That's so boring. You just sit in the back of a van for 18 hours." And I'm like, "Yeah, don't write it like that. Write like the Mission Impossible version of that, right?" Like,
Yeah.
so sometimes people know so much, they really struggle to get outside of that. And you got to remember, like I've said, like we write fiction. It's supposed to be fun.
Absolutely. So speaking of, you mentioned research. You got a lot of like gunfights, espionage, w- and English accents when you're from the USA. Like, can you talk about what kind of research do you do, and do you have like any military contacts who you got on
Oh yeah,
speed dial, or
yeah.
what's your research process like?
I have a very hefty Rolodex of contacts. Thankfully, I've worked with
Yeah.
so many people, friends with other authors, um, and then people that I know in real life. But no, the research is intense. I mean, So for me, I looked at it like two ways. I could go to London, I could explore the UK and all that, and I probably still will, especially if the series is renewed and there's more books to write. But the way I approached this was, well, hold on, I don't need to know real life London today. I just need to know the way Ted talked about it in his books. Because I got to be true and authentic to the way Ted, the universe he built, if that makes any sense. So it's like
Yeah.
I might get details right that are real, but if he changed them for his books, I've got to know that. Like I've got to be able to go with, the universe he gave me.
Uh-huh.
So that's how I approach that. Now, it's funny because the opening of this book, I hadn't planned to write, and it's a prologue. It really serves as, I think, the perfect handoff from Ted's books to mine in the series. And it's sort of well, here, I'll hope this is okay. Let me read to you the first line.
Yeah.
And then I think it'll make sense. So this is a prologue. I didn't go back and write this until like I was probably a third, maybe halfway into writing the book. And I called up my editor, Tom Colgan at Penguin, and said, hey, I think I need a new opening, something to really tie over from Ted's last book to mine. And in Ted's final book, it was called Seahawk. Um, Alex Hawk had made a promise that he was going to go to Antarctica and blow up this base called the Dragon Base. So it dawned on me like I should probably do this big like naval warfare scene and just epic, make it huge. And so the book now so I got the clearance from Tom to go back and write it. I got off that call and I was like, what did I do? I just committed to this, and it's like I don't know how I'm going to write that. So it took me 2 weeks to write that one chapter because I had to talk to people in the Navy, the Coast Guard, people that knew Russian stuff, people that knew, dude, it was just so much to try to get it right. Everything was overwhelming. I feel like I'd write one line and I'd have to send it to somebody for help to make sure it worked. But because my goal was to tie up what Ted had started, the book now opens. Lord Alexander Hawk stood proud on the bridge of his magnificent flagship Seahawk as it sailed straight into hell. It was time to finish what he had started. And that's a deeper metaphor right there. There's multiple meanings to that second part of the line. It was time to finish what he started. For Hawk, for Ted, for me, it was a lot
Oh,
of
very
doing.
layered.
Yeah.
Very cool, man. So how often are you writing? Like, how many days a week when you have a deadline? Like, how many days do you write every day? Do you have a
Yeah.
certain number of hours that you write? I'm also curious. I think people really like kind of processy stuff. So, like, how often do you write when you're working on something? How many hours? And, like, also, are you just like in a Word document, like hammering things out, or are you using like a certain
Yeah.
program?
So yes, I work in a Word document. I
Oh, okay.
try to write Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. Um, I go back and edit everything I wrote that week, but I usually start like the day editing what I wrote the day before. So if I
Uh-huh.
so like Monday morning, I'll write, and then Tuesday I'll go back and edit Monday stuff, and then I'll write a new chapter. I try to do a chapter a day, so
Yeah.
1,500 to 2,500 words a day. That's a good day. And then Saturday, I just go back and edit everything. And that sort of allows me to have a pretty clean, completed first draft when I get all the way through it for the first time. What I have begun doing though is I like to work by hand a lot now. So I never
Really?
write like full chapters. It'll be like scenes. I'll see a scene in my head or a moment. It might just be Red interacting with one of his kids and his wife or his best friend. It might be Hawk with a bad guy. Like I'll see it in my head or I'll hear it. So I go everywhere. This is my thick field journal now.
Cool.
And I don't go anywhere without it. It's with me like at all times. And like my daughter, her birthday was Saturday, turned 11, my youngest daughter, and
Happy
we were out.
birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Her name's Riley. And we were out to breakfast, and literally in the middle of breakfast, I was like, oh man, I've got it. Like if we renew the Hawk books, I know how my third one needs to open. And my family is so good about this that they're just like, let daddy do his thing. So
Cool.
the waitress is coming up and my wife's ordering for me, or my mom's ordering for me. My youngest daughter is, telling them what I like and don't like. I'm zoned out. I am at that table in the middle of the restaurant crafting the scene, trying to get it on paper as fast as I can before I forget it the way I saw it.
Amazing.
So I don't, I mean, I could, I don't do chapters that way. Now for this book, um, I found myself whenever I was stuck, I would go right by hand.
Interesting.
I felt like you can be very reckless when you're just typing on a keyboard because you know you can hit delete or backspace.
Yeah.
When you're writing by hand, you're like more committed. It's more like permanent in your mind. And so I think just very naturally, you're more careful with the words that you're choosing to use and put on the page.
That's
So when I'm
fascinating.
stuck and I'm trying to find my way through something, I go to longhand now for Hawk and for Red. But yeah, it for me, I work in chunks and I'm all about here's the chapter I got to do today. And a lot of times I create problems for tomorrow, but that's tomorrow's problem. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'll nail something and it's like this is good, and then I really will have Hawk or Red, whoever I'm writing. I have a series I mentioned with a friend of mine, Simon Gervais, The Second Son. So when we're writing those, like I might do something that really puts me or the character in a bind, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm getting out of that, but I'll figure it out tomorrow. And that's where I'll lay in bed and it might hit me. I literally have woken up in the middle of the night and it's like, oh, I know what I need to do. And I'll grab my journal, my notebooks, and I'll start scribbling and it's there. So I work in chunks. Some people know the whole story, some make it up as they go. For me, I sort of compartmentalize and I work in chunks. And because I start with the ending, I can do that. And once I get to that last chapter, the first one I wrote, I know I'm done.
I think it's fascinating that you're writing stuff by hand. And there's got to be like a different type part of the creative brain that opens when you're in that more tactile by hand way. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if you're out somewhere or if you're stuck, you will whip out the journal and write by hand. Other than that, you're kind of typing on a Word document.
Yeah, I mean, everything goes into the Word document. There's times, I get frustrated and I like if you could see my setup, I've got four monitors all around me and I'll get frustrated. I'll just push everything back and I'll pull out a notebook and I'll just start sketching out the scenes the way I know they kind of need to go. And it's a slower approach. I let the characters come to me and I'm trying to get the wording right and find it. And then it's like, I've got it. Then I'll go type it into Word.
So if you write something longhand, that once it kind of starts to click, then you go and transcribe what you've written.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll take over from there. Like the most frustrating thing is I'll nail something in longhand, but it's like the middle of a chapter. So I got to get, open up Word, write the beginning of the chapter. Then I got to write the ending. Um, but it works. It works for me. And also it just gets me away from computers and stuff. We sort of
Yeah.
live in the country. And in my series, Matthew Red's best friend is Mikey Durhammer. That's my real life best friend. His house looks at mine, literally right across the street. And so, I like to sit outside and our friends come over a lot. We have three Rottweilers. In my series, after book two, at the end of Lethal Range and then Out for Blood, and definitely in Gone Dark, you get to meet Red's Rottweiler. His name is Rubble. That's my real life dog. He's
Oh.
144 pounds of don't mess with my dad. He's super bonded to me, sleeps right next to me, doesn't like my wife or kids hugging me beyond like 3 Mississippis. He'll literally break it up. He's the best dog in the world, man. So I like to, just get outside when it's nice, sit out on the back porch, sit on our swings, throw a ball to my dog, and just kind of like peacefully not feel like I'm rushing. It's like for me, it's a good way writing in longhand in those moments. It's like I don't feel like I'm working. So
Yeah.
anything I'm getting done is like bonus. And then
I
I'll
love
go
it.
upstairs and it's like, well, I got half of today's work done already. I've already come up with, and I've sketched this out. So it's sort of like cheating, my own process a little bit.
You've painted a beautiful picture in my mind, like sitting on the porch, enjoying the weather, throwing a ball to your dog, writing in the journal. It's like This is what everyone wants, I
It's
think.
it sounds good in theory. But I also have kids. Everything's crazy. It's chaotic. My
Yeah.
dog's perfect. The other two aren't. My dog, my daughter's dog. His name is Bear. We call him Bear Man. He's a hunter, so he's hunting everything in my yard. He caught a bird yesterday. So it's like, yeah, you get interrupted with some, like real, like it sounds good. It sounds like the Hallmark movie, but the real life version is like a lot less glamorous for sure.
Yeah, I was also thinking about, they say that like Warhol had other people making his art for him. I'm just like wondering, like, do you ever get to a point in your career where you're just like so huge that you're writing stuff by hand and then just like passing it off to someone to type to
That would
transcribe
be
for you?
the dream. I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
If my wife would do it, I'd be like, "Here, babe,
transcribe
I
this
would
for
do it in
me.
a heartbeat." Yeah, for sure, I would. I would definitely.
I love it. What I hope you get to that point. You'll have to come back on the show when you
Man,
get
I
to
hope
that.
I get to that point. I hope we're speaking it into existence. I would love that.
We are. So, I want to ask you like another question or two. We're getting close to our time, but I
Sure.
had typed into my research. I had, done a little bit of research, believe it or not, before my interviews. Florida Guidestones. What are they, and how do they relate to what you're working on?
Okay, so I think you mean the Georgia Guidestones.
Yes.
Okay, I
We're
was
not,
like, you might know about something I don't.
yeah, and I don't
So
edit anything, so we're just rolling with it.
let's roll with it. There could listen. Maybe we'll make Florida Guidestones. Yeah, I would just encourage. I actually think they no longer exist. I could be wrong. I would encourage
Yeah.
everyone watching your podcast, Google it. Google it because when I did, the mystery around, like we don't know quite for sure where it came from. Um, it has to do with population control a little bit. Um, I will just say this: it played a big driving force in me deciding and creating the story around my first novel, Fields of Fire.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, or
Yeah.
we just gonna leave it at that and let people do their own research and read the book?
Oh, I like that part. Let's tell them go read the book. You'll learn plenty. No, it's just a really mysterious thing. To me, it's one of these things. If I wrote it in a book, right? Like I said this to an author recently. I think the threshold for like realistic is higher in fiction than real life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like really, truly. And don't worry, I'm not going to make any political message in this whatsoever. I promise I won't.
Thank you.
And I never would because I don't care enough. I don't want to know people's politics. I'm not going to tell you mine. But
Thank
if
you.
I wrote a scene where someone tried to assassinate a politician and at the last second, right, like they turned their head just a little, you would never believe that.
Yeah.
You would read that book and be like, dude, that wouldn't happen. Be that for sure. Like, there's just
Yeah.
you're not going to time that just right. But if I wrote it the way we all saw it happen, right, you'd never believe that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I think the threshold for realism is so much higher in fiction today. I just know that if I wrote Secret Service was not on a rooftop because it was a little slope, people would be like, "Get out of here!" Like my editors wouldn't publish it; they would
Yeah.
throw it away and be like, "You need to try again. Do something that would be more realistic, Ryan." And so the Georgia Guidestones, to me, like I'm a very curious person, and I'm like, why don't we know about these? Why don't we know more? And what is the real intended purpose and message that whoever's behind it wanted to sort of leave everybody? I feel like if I put something that mysterious in a book, people would be like, that doesn't happen.
Very
And
true.
so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Very
I'm
true.
very intrigued by things like that.
Yeah, man. Well, let's land the plane on this one. It's been great having you on. As we wrap it up, where can people find you? Tell us your name of your books again, and anything else you want
Sure.
people to know.
So, my first Alex Hawke novel, Ted Bell's Monarch, is it's in bookstores right now. You do not have to read the other 12. So this is number 13 in the series. I promise you can jump right in with this one and just have fun with it. And then my Matthew Red series, June 17th, Gone Dark. This is book 4 in my series. You can see the other ones behind me. Same thing. I really write mine so you can just kind of jump in and learn about them. What I always tell people is they say, should I start at the beginning? I tell them, well, pick up the new one and see if you like it. Because if you like it, you got a whole year until the next one. So you can go back and read all the other ones, while you wait. So you can jump in with that. This November, The Second Son It's by Simon Gervais and me. Really excited about that book, man. I'd love to bring Simon and come back and hang with you in November to talk about it, because it's the kind of book where the twists are so big it took two thriller writers to pull off, and I genuinely, sincerely mean that. So we had a lot of fun with that. You can find me. The best place is just therealbookspy.com. And then all the socials, there's so many now. You can find me at all of them at either The Real Book Spy or at Ryan Steck Author.
Amazing, my friend. Thanks so much for coming on.
Man, thank you so much for having me.